Have you ever noticed how some people change everything without saying a word? They don't shout. They don't explain. They simply withdraw, and the entire atmosphere feels it. The tension shifts. The silence gains weight, and suddenly, others start to miss something that's still there. Now imagine if that were you. If you chose silence over a response, distance over an outburst, if instead of justifying yourself, you simply weren't available anymore, what might start to happen? That's where everything changes. When you stop always being available, whether in presence, response, or emotion, the system goes into crisis. The world got used to controlling you through your reactions, but the day you withdraw, the game flips. And those who thought they knew you realize they only knew your devotion, not your essence. Carl Jung said, "Everything that irritates us about others reveals something about ourselves. So stop and observe." When you become inaccessible, who panics? Who tries to provoke you just to get a reaction? That answer reveals more about them, and about how much you're still caught in invisible games. You still give yourself away, not by choice, but by habit. Because you believe yielding is love, pleasing is keeping the peace. You say yes when everything in you screams no. You reply quickly to avoid disappointing. You smile when you're exhausted. And so, day after day, you fade, while sustaining relationships that never fully saw you. In the end, you're left with an emptiness you can't explain, a fatigue that's not physical, but existential. And why? Because you became too accessible. Because you gave away your presence like it was infinite. But your energy has value, and it has limits. And not everyone deserves access to what's most alive in you, your silence. This video isn't about escaping the world, it's about returning to yourself. It's about what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole, without needing to please, without losing yourself in others. And it all starts with silence, when you choose not to react, but to observe. When your withdrawal comes not from fear, but from awareness. In that quiet gesture, a power is born that needs no explanation. So I ask you, with complete sincerity, how long will you let others' emotions decide for you? How long will you react like you're programmed, tethered to every jab at your wounds? Maybe it's time to cut those invisible strings, to stop explaining yourself, to withdraw with purpose, not as an escape, but as a reunion. Because when you stop being available, the world stops treating you as predictable, and everything starts to change. From early on, you were taught to always be there, to respond quickly, smile even when tired, say yes when everything in you begged no. They made it seem like your worth was in being accessible, always. But here's a truth maybe no one dared to tell you. That constant availability isn't generosity. It's a disguised prison. As long as you believe you need to always be present, you'll keep being manipulated, drained, and discarded the moment you stop being convenient. The truth is, being always accessible makes you obvious, and everything obvious ends up being used, not noticed. Slowly, you become a kind of instant relief, called upon when someone needs comfort, forgotten the moment their need passes. And the cruelest part is that you stay there, waiting for that unconditional presence to bring back something that never came, reciprocity. But the more you offer yourself without discernment, the less others see you. The excess of presence cancels out the value of your absence. Jung called it the persona, the mask we wear to be accepted. It's what keeps you always accessible, even when everything inside you craves silence. You respond even when exhausted. Jungian without reason. Smile to avoid displeasing. Bend to avoid rejection. But the more you adapt to others' gaze, the further you drift from yourself. That constant availability is a disguised form of self-abandonment, a silent attempt to control how you're seen. But that control comes at a steep cost. It steals your peace, your vital energy, and leaves you empty, trying to please a world that never gives back. Those who demand your constant presence aren't interested in you, but in what you provide. Validation, company, distraction. Your affection to them is utility. And the moment you set a boundary, everything changes. They get irritated. They pull away. They say you're not the same anymore. But the problem was never your change. It was your loss of functionality. And here's the hardest part. The more available you make yourself, the less value you're given. Because what's given without effort becomes an emotional emergency fund. And what's always there, no one fears losing. So take a deep breath and ask yourself honestly, who truly deserves your presence, your listening, your attention, or better yet, who, in truth, deserves your silence? Before you answer, look deeper. Why do you react so quickly? Why do you feel such urgency to justify, explain, please? Jung called this psychic energy, and when you don't learn to protect yours, someone will inevitably use it against you. That's what we'll talk about next. Jung never saw the mind as an automatic machine, reacting without cost. To him, the psyche is an energetic field, subtle, sensitive, limited. Every thought, every emotion, every choice has a price. The question is direct but profound. Are you deciding where your energy goes, or are you letting the world spend it for you like it belongs to them? Every time you react on impulse, a piece of your energy is lost. Defending yourself against empty criticism, trying to prove a point to someone who doesn't want to understand, insisting on pleasing those who don't value you, you're draining your own life force. Jung was blunt. What you resist persists. And the more you react, the more you tie yourself to what you should have let go. Those who live emotionally drained aren't weak, they're misguided. And constant exhaustion takes its toll. It makes you vulnerable, exposed, defenseless. Manipulative people sense this from a mile away. They see that you haven't learned to protect your energy, that you react to everything, that you wear yourself out trying to fix what isn't yours. And that's exactly where they step in, to siphon off what little you have left. Jung said, a healthy mind is one that knows how to preserve its energy. That takes courage, saying no without guilt, staying silent without feeling weak, observing before diving into a response. True power isn't in reacting, it's in choosing, knowing the right moment, the right measure, the right direction. And that only happens when you start seeing yourself honestly, when you understand your impulses before they decide for you. How many nights have you lost trying to digest harsh words? How many times have you replayed a conversation in silence, searching for answers where there was only disregard? That's the invisible theft of your energy. You keep alive ghosts that should have been buried. You feed stories that only persist because you keep reacting. And in doing so, you drift further from yourself. One thought at a time. Your psychic energy is a field of presence. When well cared for, it speaks for you. You walk into a room, and the silence says it all. There's strength in the air. There's a boundary in your gaze. But when that energy is mismanaged, you fade. You react too much, yield on impulse, lose clarity. And the world, which has no mercy for those who give themselves up easily, walks over you without noticing you're there. Observe your own triggers. What throws you off balance? What makes you respond without thinking? It's in those points, invisible but frequent, that your energy slips away unnoticed, and that's where you need to act. Not to become cold, distant, or inaccessible, but to cultivate discernment, to learn to be a selective presence, to finally claim sovereignty over yourself. Jung brought a powerful revelation. Conserving your energy breaks the projections others plaster onto you, and that bothers them deeply. Because when you stop reacting, you start shattering the mirror they used to avoid seeing themselves. That's where we enter denser territory, silent manipulation. And in the next part, you'll understand why your absence disarms games that once seemed invisible. Get ready to see what's always been there, draining you in silence. You think you're in control, that you react because you chose to react, but the truth is subtler and more dangerous. Your emotions follow old, automatic, almost invisible patterns, and those who know this manipulate you effortlessly. The opportunist doesn't shout. They just touch the exact spot where your wound is exposed. And, as always, you react. Without realizing, you're already caught in their game. Jung called it projection, when someone dumps onto you what they can't face in themselves. But there's a detail few notice. The more available you are, the more you become a passive mirror, a blank canvas for what the other refuses to confront. And that's how you end up carrying burdens that aren't yours, molding yourself to fit the image they projected until you lose who you are. Have you ever noticed that friend who only shows up when they're in crisis? Or that partner who seeks you out only when they need saving? Or those people who praise you but vanish when you're no longer useful to them? They don't see you. They see the role you've agreed to play. And why do you agree? Because you're afraid of disappointing, afraid of being forgotten, afraid of not being loved if you're not always available. The most dangerous manipulation doesn't make noise, it whispers through guilt. It's when you feel you must be there, even when exhausted, that you need to help, even at the cost of yourself, that you have to understand the other, even when you're in ruins. The manipulator doesn't need to dominate you. They just need you to keep reacting the way you always have. The rest, they already know how it plays out. When you go silent, something breaks. Not in you, but in them. The game loses its script. The no you never said becomes an unexpected mirror. Your absence starts to weigh more than 1,000 words. The mask they projected onto you falls, and suddenly, they don't know who you are anymore. Worse, they're forced to look at themselves. And not everyone is ready for that kind of mirror. Your absence threatens, not because it hurts, but because it reveals. It forces the other to face their own emptiness without distraction. Your silence lays bare the noise they've always tried to ignore. And that's when the attacks come. The criticism, the drama. Not because you changed too much, but because you stopped functioning as their mirror. And now they have to deal with the real reflection. Jung said, "We don't become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." When you stop feeding the cycle, something profound happens. The other's shadow emerges. Without your automatic acceptance, without your predictable reaction, the darkness they once contained through you starts to spill over in them. And that's unbearable for those who used you as an escape. But now, the question is different. Are you ready to be misunderstood for protecting yourself? To be accused for setting boundaries? Are you willing to cross the uncomfortable silence that follows the break, and which holds in its quiet the start of your freedom? There's a kind of strength that doesn't reveal itself in presence, but in absence. A silent, almost invisible power that doesn't need to impose itself, because it's already whole. It's born when you decide not to react anymore, when you choose silence, not as a retreat, but as a territory. It's in that space of lucid withdrawal that everything starts to reorganize. Relationships, roles, hidden games. And what seemed like weakness reveals itself as your subtlest form of power. We live in a world that shouts, where everyone wants to be right, respond first, win an argument, even if the price is their own peace. But there's a kind of strength that escapes all that, and few know it: conscious silence. I'm not talking about the silence that hides, but the one that observes, the one that chooses the right moment, the one that doesn't flee, but commands. This silence isn't absence, it's presence taken to the extreme, a state where you don't disappear, you become undeniable. For Jung, silence wasn't absence, it was fertile ground, It was where the soul could finally bloom without the noise of external demands. When you stop reacting, something shifts. You start to see. And what was once invisible reveals itself, repeating patterns, manipulative ties, sabotages you allowed. Silence brings clarity, and clarity is dangerous to those who've always fed on your confusion. Have you ever noticed how some people panic when you don't respond? When you don't justify, don't explain, just vanish? It's not longing, it's loss of control. While you speak, they still have the script. But when you go silent, the narrative slips from their hands, and those who fed on your reactions now have to face their own emptiness. That scares them, that disarms them. True silence isn't about quieting your voice, it's about protecting your own energy. It's when you choose not to be dragged into others' storms, when you refuse wars that don't belong to you. Jung said the process of individuation requires this withdrawal, because only far from the world's noise do you finally start to hear your own truth. When it's real, silence has the power to purify, but also to break. It distances you from those who only knew how to love the version of you that served them. It makes you invisible to eyes addicted to the surface. And inevitably, it leads some to call you cold. Not because you've grown cold, but because you stopped burning yourself to warm others. Those reactions don't speak to your lack of affection. They speak to the other's inability to handle your depth. Because those who only loved what you offered never saw who you were. With time, you stop wasting words. Every sentence gains weight, direction, presence, and you understand. Not every gaze deserves your truth. Not every conversation deserves your devotion. Silence, then, stops being absence. It becomes sacred territory. A mature choice of someone who no longer needs to prove, convince, or beg. It's the language of those who inhabit their own essence and no longer negotiate their energy. Silence unsettles, not because it's empty, but because it mirrors what the other avoids hearing. It hands back their own internal noise, without distraction, without forced comfort. Your absence doesn't need to be explained. It carries meaning on its own, and those who get irritated by it reveal what they've always hidden. They relied on your instability to sustain their own illusion of control. The most transformative silence isn't the one that disarms the other. It's the one that returns you to yourself. It's the one that doesn't need to prove strength because it's already whole. A silence that doesn't seek to be understood, only felt. It's in that intimate space, far from others' urgency, that your vital energy starts to return, and with it, the memory of who you've always been, before you needed to please. And that's what we'll dive into now, because silencing the world around you is just the beginning. The real work is learning to direct your energy with intention, knowing where to place it, where to hold it back, and above all, where to never let it slip away again. It's time to become selective, not just with what you do, but with what vibrates within you. Understanding is just the start, because if you keep saying yes when you feel no, responding out of obligation, sustaining relationships that are already dead, then what you have isn't awareness. It's sophisticated self-deception. Knowing isn't enough. Transformation begins when you start acting like someone who's truly chosen themselves. Real change starts when you make a firm choice to be selective, to choose what touches your energy, what enters your routine, what deserves your attention. Being unavailable isn't being cold, it's being conscious. It's stopping the reflex of giving yourself away and starting to guard what's yours. It's about finally taking command of your peace. It begins with simple gestures, breathing before responding, choosing silence over haste, ending a conversation before it steals your peace, saying no firmly without guilt, turning off your phone, stepping away, preserving yourself. But the most important thing is this: you don't need to justify yourself. Your absence doesn't require explanation. Your peace is not up for negotiation, and for many, that's unforgivable, because silence breaks the plot. When you stop explaining yourself, the other loses control over the story where you were always the available one, the understanding one, the easy one to reach. And without that role, they don't know how to use you anymore. Jung understood that the path to becoming who you are inevitably passes through solitude, but not a sad solitude, a sacred one, a silent retreat where you reconnect with your own voice, free from the world's echoes. It's in that intimate space that you stop shaping yourself to others' gaze and finally start building your identity from your own center. Want to know if you're truly evolving? Notice who pulls away when you withdraw, who tries to provoke you when you choose silence, who accuses you of changing just when you start protecting yourself. Those movements aren't rejections, they're confirmations, silent proof that you've finally started to break free. At first, being unavailable hurts. The guilt comes, the fear of seeming selfish, the criticism from those who say you've changed too much. But that's just the discomfort of rebuilding. You've spent a lifetime being trained to stay quiet, yield, please. So it's natural that choosing yourself feels disruptive to yourself and to everyone who fed on your old submission. True self-determination begins when you choose to be selective. Every no you offer the world is a silent yes to your integrity. By leaving places that sicken you, you declare, "My peace isn't for sale." And when you stop justifying yourself, something shifts. Maybe not everyone understands you, but those who stay start to respect you. Not everyone is ready for your new presence because it brings silence where there was once chaos. Your emotional absence exposes wounds the other tried to hide. It shows how much they relied on your confusion to feel in control. That's where the rupture comes. And with it, the pain, the solitude, the temporary emptiness. It feels like you're losing something. But in truth, you're just letting go of what held you back. But what comes after? What's born when you choose silence? What emerges in the space left by everything you let go? That's what we'll touch on now. The silent rebirth that only happens when you accept being misunderstood and still stand firm. When you choose your own wholeness, even if the price is walking alone for a while. When you stop being available to everyone, something inside you starts to reorganize. First comes the silence, dense, strange, almost uncomfortable. Then, the solitude. But not the kind that suffocates, the kind that cleanses. It's the solitude of those who rediscover themselves, of those who choose not to betray themselves anymore to be accepted. And in that new space, where there was once noise, clarity starts to grow. Peace settles where there was urgency. Strength takes the place of neediness. This is the start of a different time, a time when you don't beg for presence, you're enough, and because of that, you're remembered, not by many, but by those who can see what's rare. If this resonated with you, maybe it's time to go deeper. There's a silent path that begins when you choose yourself, for real. And if you want to follow that journey, subscribe. Not out of obligation, but because maybe it's time to not lose yourself again.